On December 26, 1996, 6-year-old beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey was found strangled in the basement of her family's home in Boulder, Colorado, with a ransom note demanding $118,000, leaving behind a trail of questions that would haunt the nation for decades to come. The note, written in a childlike handwriting style, read, "You will never see your daughter again. You people are no doubt money-hungry and will follow whatever direction we give to lead you on the right track. If you want to see your daughter alive, you will follow these instructions to the letter." JonBenet, a precocious and charming child, had been participating in local beauty pageants, showcasing her talent and charisma on stage. Her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, were proud of their daughter's accomplishments and had been grooming her for a bright future. But on that fateful Christmas night, JonBenet's life was cut short in a brutal and senseless act of violence. According to her parents, JonBenet had been excited to compete in the upcoming Miss Sunshine State Teen America pageant, and her mother had even bought her a new dress for the occasion. As news of the murder spread, the community was left reeling in shock and grief. The police investigation that followed was one of the largest in U.S. history at the time, with detectives from the Boulder Police Department working tirelessly to piece together the events of that night. The case was a complex web of clues, suspects, and motives, with no shortage of twists and turns that would keep investigators on their toes. One of the most significant leads came from a neighbor, Patsy Sosa, who reported hearing a loud argument between John and Patsy Ramsey on the night of the murder, but when questioned further, she recanted her statement, citing she had been mistaken. The police investigation also revealed that JonBenet's family had been experiencing financial difficulties, and John Ramsey's business was struggling. Additionally, the family's housekeeper, Linda Hoffman-Pugh, reported that JonBenet's mother had been acting strangely in the days leading up to the murder, often being overheard talking to herself and muttering about something terrible happening. The police also discovered a mysterious DNA sample on JonBenet's clothing, which would later be matched to an unknown male, sparking a massive manhunt. The investigation began with a thorough search of the Ramsey home, where police collected evidence from every room, including JonBenet's bedroom, the basement where her body was found, and the kitchen where the ransom note was discovered. The police also interviewed the family members, including JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy, and her older brother, Burke. Early on, investigators focused on the family as potential suspects, but as the investigation progressed, other suspects emerged. One of the key pieces of evidence was the ransom note, which was discovered on the stairs leading to the basement. The note demanded $118,000 in exchange for JonBenet's safe return, but it was clear that the note was written by someone close to the family, as it referenced JonBenet's participation in local beauty pageants and her mother's own pageant experiences. The note also included a bizarre phrase, "You will be missed," which was seen as a red flag by investigators. As the investigation continued, the police collected DNA evidence from JonBenet's body and from the crime scene, but it didn't match anyone in the database. The police also conducted a thorough review of the family's alibis, but nothing seemed to add up. The case was a puzzle with no clear solution, and the police were no closer to catching the killer. It wasn't until 2008, more than a decade after JonBenet's murder, that DNA evidence would finally be re-examined. In a stunning turn of events, DNA from an unknown male was found on JonBenet's clothing, but it didn't match anyone in the database. The news sent shockwaves through the community, and investigators were left wondering if they had been looking at the wrong suspects all along. At this point, the Boulder Police Department had already collected over 1,500 DNA samples from people with potential connections to the case, including family members, friends, and acquaintances. The case took another dramatic turn in 2016, when a DNA analysis from the original evidence was matched to an unknown male profile in the DNA database. This breakthrough was made possible by advancements in genetic genealogy, which allowed investigators to compare the DNA evidence to a vast pool of public profiles. The news was met with a mix of emotions, as some family members expressed hope that the killer might finally be caught, while others were skeptical that the new evidence would lead to justice. JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, had always maintained their innocence, and some family members believed that the new DNA evidence might finally vindicate them. Despite the new leads, the case remains unsolved, and the killer remains at large. The Ramsey family has continued to speak out about the case, advocating for justice and seeking closure. In 2018, John Ramsey released a statement urging the public to come forward with any new information, saying, "I still believe that someone out there knows something about my daughter's murder, and I'm asking them to please come forward." The case has also spawned numerous books, documentaries, and TV shows, keeping the public fascinated with the mystery of JonBenet's murder. The 1996 CBS special, The Case of JonBenet Ramsey, remains one of the most watched true crime documentaries in history, and the case continues to captivate audiences to this day. In the end, the case of JonBenet Ramsey remains a tragic and senseless act of violence that shook the nation to its core. The investigation was a complex and often frustrating process, with no shortage of twists and turns that kept investigators on their toes. Despite the new DNA evidence, the killer remains unknown, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. On December 26, 1996, a chilling 911 call from Patsy Ramsey, JonBenet's mother, alerted police to the discovery of her 6-year-old daughter's lifeless body in the basement of the family's Boulder, Colorado home. The young beauty pageant contestant had been brutally murdered, with a garrote made from a piece of cord wrapped around her throat and a ransom note left on the stairs. The note demanded $118,000 in exchange for JonBenet's safe return, but it was clear that this was no ordinary kidnapping. As investigators began to process the crime scene, they discovered a tangled web of evidence, including a suspicious Polaroid photograph taken by John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, which showed a faint image of a person in the background, later identified as Patsy. The police also found a cryptic message scrawled on the wall in JonBenet's bedroom, reading, "I love you, Santa." It was a message that would haunt the family for years to come. The investigation was led by Boulder Police Detective Linda Orant, who was initially called to the scene and would later become a key witness in the case. Orant's notes revealed that Patsy had been acting strangely during the initial interview, displaying a lack of emotion and a seeming detachment from the situation. This would later become a point of contention in the case, with some speculating that Patsy's behavior was indicative of guilt. As the investigation continued, DNA evidence was collected from JonBenet's clothing and the crime scene, but it would be years before it would be matched to an unknown male DNA profile. In 2008, the DNA was matched to an unknown male, but the match was later deemed to be inconclusive. The case remains one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history. The Ramsey family has continued to seek closure, with John and Patsy Ramsey appearing on the Dr. Phil show in 2006, where they expressed their desire to clear their names and find the true killer. The public remains fascinated with the mystery of JonBenet's murder, with numerous books, documentaries, and TV shows exploring the case over the years. The case serves as a reminder that justice can be elusive, and that sometimes, the truth can be hidden in plain sight.